Hey gang, today on Cross-Examination, we are going to dig deep into lawyer portrayals in television and movies. I cannot wait. This is one of my favorite things in the world to do, even in my free time, and now I get to share it with you here on Cross-Examination. But remember, before we begin, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It really does help the channel, which is growing every single day. Let's get after it.
All right, Jim, we're starting with The Sopranos. Are you a Sopranos guy?
I like The Sopranos,
okay.
Absolutely.
So this is when Carmela and Tony were having some problems. Carmela's trying to retain a lawyer.
Oh, I know this scene.
And she's running into a little bit of trouble.
Yes.
Oh, hi. Great, thank you. The reason I called, I gave your secretary the broad strokes.
You were in the middle of a separation. The original attorney retired.
Right, Bob Greenberg. At any rate, I'm thinking it's time I move forward with the divorce proceedings.
Miss Soprano, I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut you short.
Yeah.
As far as candidate, I'm afraid I have to accuse myself.
What do you mean? Why?
This is,
Actually, your husband had been in to see me for a consultation last year.
My husband hired you?
No, but based on a prior meeting, the Code of Professional Responsibility precludes me from representing you. Because of that consultation. Well, you can probably figure that maneuver out for yourself.
Jesus Christ.
I understand your frustration. If you like, I can recommend a colleague. Someone your husband hasn't contaminated.
that's a thing.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, that's a thing.
Wow,
yeah,
that's
it's
great.
a thing.
And all you got to do is like take a call or a meeting
No,
or...
so, all right, so first of all, there's any credible, experienced divorce lawyer.
And wait, actually, just explain that because they do, we understand it, but in case the audience missed it, if you have a conversation.
So if you have any information that was given to you as attorney-client privilege, you can't represent the adverse party, okay? So, of course, what some people, I think very stupid people do, is they think, hey, I'm going to try to get rid of every good divorce lawyer in my geographic area so that my spouse has no choice but to hire someone terrible. By the way, this is a terrible idea for you to do because you do not want your spouse represented by Bob, the real estate lawyer. You want them represented by an experienced, knowledgeable matrimonial attorney because that person is going to know what to ask for, what not to ask for. They don't have to be educated on matrimonial law. So if you precluded out all of the good divorce lawyers, you've guaranteed you're going to have an idiot on the other side of the case, which is going to protract the litigation and make it really difficult. That being said, yeah, this is a real thing. Like people will go around. This is why every credible you cannot get me on the phone. If you want to talk to me, if you want to email me, you got to pay a $750 consultation fee. So very few people will spend that money just to bump people off of cases. But in the event that someone does, because there are a lot of high net worth divorce lawyers like myself and a few others that, you know, they jokingly call us the matrimonial mafia, like the 5 families that we represent the big people. What they'll often do is someone would be willing to spend that kind of money. There is now case law, particularly in New York, that says that if someone has intentionally conflicted out attorneys, that may be an exception and you can in fact represent this person. So I've had a couple of cases where a person went around and did the shopping thing where they tried to knock out all the good lawyers, and I've had counsel that were able to stay on a case even though they did a consultation. Some lawyers even now have on their consultation intake sheet something that says this does not create an attorney-client relationship for the purposes of it. I personally would not, if I have done a consultation, ever represent the adverse party because in my consultation, I get a lot of information from people. I give them advice about things, and I just see that as an irreparable conflict. So if someone's willing to spend $750 to knock me off their case, they can. Maybe if I find that happens too often, I would bump out, you know, my consult fee and make it higher. But the truth is it happens, but it doesn't happen often enough that it really hurts anybody's business model in any significant way. But it is a real thing. And people were doing it before The Sopranos. This isn't like something The Sopranos created, although people sometimes now refer to it as, oh, that Sopranos thing. But the truth is this was something people did for many, many years. No credible divorce lawyer gives free consults, period. If you got a divorce lawyer who does free consults, run for the hills.
I'd also imagine when Tony Soprano is maybe the one trying to pull off this strategy, it hits a little bit different. Have you ever been intimidated by a potential adversary or a client that you said, I'm not touching this?
No.
Would other divorce lawyers though?
Maybe.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like you'd run towards the fire.
Yeah, I love a fucking good fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are people that would go, yeah, this is too much of a headache. Like I know a lot of my colleagues that, they don't like to take heavy cases, controversial cases. A lot of them refer those cases to me. Like I've actually had people that are like, yeah, this is a shit show. You need somebody like Sexton.
This is a Jim Sexton.
Because it's like chaos. Like the trial's in 3 weeks and it's a mess. And like, I love that shit. Like I'm somebody who's like, yeah, do it. Throw me in. I love it. So I love those kinds of crisis situations. I'm not someone like, I don't know how to handle peacetime. I'm really good at war. So I think that some of my colleagues are very thoughtful, intelligent, like good at analysis and strategy and stuff like that, but they're not good at chaos. I'm good at chaos.
This next clip comes from a devastating movie, A Marriage Story. Scarlett Johansson
How
and
do they
Adam
call
Driver.
this a marriage story? It should be called a divorce story,
right? But this scene is Ray Liotta speaking to Adam Driver, basically trying to convince him, you need to sack up here. This is going to be a dogfight.
I know the lawyer this guy was based on.
Oh, really? This is a real, like a based on true story?
Both of these characters, both her lawyer, the one played by Laura Dern, and him are based on real attorneys. Laura, I think it's known that the Laura Dern character is based on Laura Wasser, who's an LA divorce attorney, who's very, very talented courtroom lawyer, but has that like demeanor and that competitiveness. And I know who this person's based on, but it was told to me in confidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's roll it.
Whatever money I make back in the theater.
I wonder, do we ask for support? Interesting.
From Nicole? I'm not going to do that.
Does your wife's family have money?
Her mother has some from her TV career, and her father died.
Well, we could say that we don't want her mother to see the kid. Draw her into the case.
In that instance, her mother could pay your legal fees.
No. I'm very close to her mom. Nicole's family has been my family.
Yeah, but that's gonna change, and I suggest you get used to it. We need to hire a private investigator.
Really? I mean, really?
Does your wife do drugs or anything? Coke?
Not in any real way.
Well, we're not gonna win if she's the perfect mother.
She was addicted to Tums for a while. It wasn't nothing. She was up to a tube a day.
Have you noticed anyone following you?
No.
Well, keep an eye out. Look, you need to be prepared for the fact that Nora is gonna portray you as a neglectful, absent father.
But I'm not.
You live in New York. You're consumed with your work. She and your kid are out here, struggling. Nora's gonna use that strategy. I'm sure of it.
But Nicole's not going to lie.
Listen, if we start from a place of reasonable and they start from a place of crazy, when we settle, we'll be somewhere between reasonable and crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it. It's a brash way of presenting it, but it's absolutely the conversation you end up having to have with clients. Like, my job is to be paranoid on your behalf, and my job is to... It is difficult to simultaneously prevent and prepare for war. Like the things you have to say to a client to get them ready for what might be coming at them are things that often will amplify conflict between people. Right. And, a lot of times, like, this is your first divorce. It's not ours. Like, we've seen this, and everybody comes in and says, I want to be fair. But your definition of fair and the other person's definition of fair are completely fucking different. So the truth is, like, we know where this story goes, and we're trying to get ahead of it a lot of the time. And in that process, unfortunately, sometimes you have to put things in people's heads that make them go, well, maybe if that happens, I have to think about how I deal with that. And that is a very uncomfortable thing to have to do, but it's a very real thing. And it's our job. You want your lawyer to be paranoid on your behalf. You want your lawyer to see blind spots. You want your lawyer to it is better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. And so sometimes you have to look, a lawyer's job is to identify leverage, cultivate leverage, and decide when to use leverage. And that is all that Ray Liotta's character is doing in that situation. And by the way, exactly what he's predicting is what happens subsequently. Like, this is how divorces get amplified. Nobody ever comes in and goes, I want this to be awful and expensive and terrible, and I'd really like to burn up the goodwill between the two of us. People come in and they say, look, I want to be fair, but I have these concerns and this is what I have to do. And exactly, I remember as a young lawyer, I want to like tussle my hair when I think back on the 20-something-year-old Jim. I wanted to be my yes is a yes and my no is a no, and I'm not going to take outrageous positions in negotiation. And then I got my ass handed to me over and over again because I would go in with a reasonable, principle-based position, and the other side would come in with some outrageous, crazy shit, and the judge would go, all right, let's just split the difference. And it would be somewhere between normal and crazy, and it would be, boom, more crazy. So you just had to sort of adapt yourself to saying, okay, way. I have to figure out a different way to do things. Now, I don't think the solution is to take crazy positions. I think the solution is to point out how fucking crazy that position is and say, well, Judge, I could come in and argue X, Y, and Z, but I'm not crazy like they are. So I'm coming in and saying this because this is a fair number. But if you want to play that bullshit game, here's what my position would be. And then here's their stupid position. And then you can take these two stupid positions and land here, which is where I'd like to start. And that's where you build real credibility with judges.
Do you subscribe to the idea of you can be nice or you can win in a divorce?
I think you can be nice and win. I see there's a difference between being nice and being kind. I always tell people I'm not nice, I'm polite. There's a difference. Like I'm polite. I'm a gentleman. I'm not disrespectful to people. But if you don't get in the ring if you don't want to throw hands. Like that's it. Just don't get, you don't have to get, I'm not walking around punching people in the subways, right? But if you walk in the boxing ring and you lace up the gloves, you're going to get fucking hit. That's how it works. Like don't walk in a courtroom if you don't want to have a trail of blood. That's how it works. I will do everything I can when a client comes into my office to convince them not to use me for anything other than negotiating something in a friendly way. But at the end of the day, sometimes the world needs bad men. We keep the other bad men from the door.
Next clip from a classic, Kramer versus Kramer.
Oof.
This is the cross-examination scene. There's a ton to choose from, and I'm sure this is a movie we'll revisit for this. But this is when Meryl Streep is getting cross-examined, and it's a pretty aggressive approach.
Gosh,
So, you were a failure at the one most important relationship in your life.
Objects. Overruled. The witness's opinion on this is relevant.
I was not a failure.
Oh? What do you call it then? A success? The marriage ended in divorce.
I consider it less my failure than his.
Congratulations, Mrs. Kramer. You've just rewritten matrimonial law. You were both divorced.
Objection.
Your Honor, I would like to ask what this model of civility and respectability has ever succeeded at. Were you a failure at the one most important personal relationship in your life?
It did not succeed.
Not it, Mrs. Kramer. You. Were you a failure at the one most important relationship in your life? Were you?
This is absurd.
And this here, the head shake. Oh, Dustin giving her the... Oh.
Is that a yes, Mrs. Kramer?
No further questions.
Yeah, that's...
is that ridiculous?
It's
or is
ridiculous.
That, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's an absolutely ridiculous cross-examination. That's not what cross-examination sounds like. The premise he was working very hard to try to establish is totally irrelevant.
Right.
Did you was your marriage a failure? Also, the way he parsed the question, you would never parse a question that way in cross-examination. If the witness is saying anything other than yes or no in cross-examination, you're doing a terrible fucking job. Like everything is putting words in the witness's mouth. So even if you wanted to establish that premise, you would say, isn't it a fact, ma'am, that you failed at your marriage? Which, by the way, I would never ask because it's not important. Like it's really like the marriage ended, right? Isn't it a fact? Now, he was successful in making her look evasive for a second when she goes, well, I would say it didn't succeed. And I'm sorry, what's another name for what doesn't succeed? Would it be failure? So when you can use cross-examination to establish that a person's being evasive and that makes the judge not like the witness and maybe causes them to like impose the asshole tax on the person. But like the structure of that cross-examination, and they're like, isn't it true? Like that's
Answer the question.
Yeah, you don't do that. It's a bad look. You actually would say to the judge, Your Honor, I'd ask that the court instruct the witness to answer the question as been posed. And that's actually more, remember, this is not jury trials. These are bench trials. So you're doing this in front of a judge. Some judges will let you do very performance-based stuff. Some judges will not. By the time cases devolve to that level where you're cross-examining a witness, very rarely does your client look at you and go like, oh, did you have to be that hard on her? Usually when you take a break from testimony, they're like, holy shit, that was amazing.
How
like
often
it's like their
do you
favorite.
go to trial?
Depends on the kind of lawyer that you are. I go to trial quite a lot.
Really?
People hire me because they want a trial lawyer. But it's like saying, how often do you get surgery? And if you're a surgeon, most people who come to you, they come to you because they need surgery. Sure. A lot of times now people hire me because they know I'm a trial lawyer and I don't end up having to do the trials because people know I'm a trial lawyer.
Right.
So they know I'm not afraid of the 5 magic words. Please call your first witness. So a lot of lawyers like who are good trial lawyers, when we're up against each other, we don't take the case to trial because our attitude is like, hey, there's going to be blood on both of us if we do this thing. But some people, if you bring a trial lawyer, if you bring bring a gun to a knife fight, you're going to win, right? Like, so, if you bring a trial lawyer to a situation, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Like, it's better to have a trial lawyer and not need it than to need a trial lawyer and not have it. I have a lot of people that end up hiring my firm right before trial because they hired someone who is like, oh, I don't try cases, I settle them, and da-da-da. And then they can't reach a court and they go, well, what do I do now? And the person goes, well, I'm not really a trial lawyer. And then they end up having to hire me. Or I have a lot of law firms that will hire me to be trial counsel, where they'll say, look, we brought this case all the way. We thought it was going to settle. It didn't. Can you jump in and try the case now? And I'm happy to do that because it's my favorite thing is to be in a courtroom cross-examining people. That's not what cross-examination looks like. It's actually way more exciting and interesting and intellectual than that. Equally compelling, if not more compelling than that. I've made people cry on the witness stand. I've made people have a breakdown on the witness stand. I secretly imagine I'd love to cross-examine someone to death. That would be to me. If that happens, I'm dropping the mic and walking out. But I've told you my favorite story is I finished a cross and the woman just said, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. And the judge said, well, Mr. Sexton's going to finish his inquiry, so if you need a break, you can have a break. And they started walking out of the courtroom, and her lawyer was behind her, and I was behind her lawyer, and she didn't realize I was behind her lawyer, and she turned around and looked at her lawyer and went, you got to get this fucking guy off of me. And I remember thinking, this is great. I love this.
Sick pup, man.
I love this fucking job, man.
Well, if that was a silly cross-examination, what about this one from Big Little Lies? Also back with Meryl Streep, now at a much older age. What about Nicole Kidman?
Oh, I watched
cross-examining her mother-in-law.
Physically fucking painful. I watched this series, and I remember watching this and being like, "Oh, shut up! Like this is not how." Go ahead, make me suffer.
No. You suggested that I got violent with my sons.
You would
Is it your
never do your own trial.
Routinely violent with
Never.
them?
No, not routinely.
Is it your testimony that I am often violent with them?
No, but who knows what I haven't seen?
So now you're basing your opinions on what you haven't seen?
I'm not a trained lawyer, so the semantics...
Please, would you direct your responses to me? I'm asking the questions. No, the truth of it is, you saw me lose my temper with my son once, where I overreacted. I pushed him to the ground.
This is a speech.
Once.
It's not a question.
Well, you would know that better than anyone, wouldn't you, as a young mother?
Ooh.
Did you ever lose your temper with your boys?
Well, this isn't simply about temper or temperament.
Did you ever lose your temper while you were driving an automobile and cause the car to crash? Would you like me to repeat the question?
I love this
Poor
line.
Meryl can't get a break.
This is great.
I heard the question. It was obscene.
It was obscene.
It's obscene.
And it goes on more and more where she tries to prove that she almost killed her kids, and that's why.
Yes.
But yeah,
that was an
being
unbelievably stupid courtroom scene. That is in no way. This is why people come in with these bizarre beliefs on what a trial is going to look like. And that is just absolutely preposterous. That's not how cross-examinations are structured. If you were to do a cross-examination as the adverse party of your, I guess most people might fantasize about that. I don't know. It's just stupid. That was just
how about the speech aspect? Yes, I did push my kid to the ground. You know what? Maybe you don't want to say that.
That's just not how it's done. And you don't look, judges would never give you that kind of leeway that you could be like, well, isn't it true that the reason why you did this is that blah, 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 and you just give a 5-minute soliloquy? That's not how it works.
Well, we're going to wrap up on some real legal analysis here. This is some true
good
divorce lawyer stuff.
Let's get in there.
This is from a little movie I like to call Liar Liar.
Oh, classic.
Weight 105? Yeah, in your bra.
Your Honor, I object.
You would.
Hey! Quiet! Overruled. Wait.
118. All right, fine. I'm 127.
Uh-huh. And it says here you were born in 1964, but that's not true either, is it? Is it?
No.
Can you tell me what it says here on your birth certificate under date of birth?
Your Honor, I object. What does this have to do with anything?
Overruled. Mrs. Cole, answer the question.
1965.
Now, let me get this straight. That would mean that you lied about your age to make yourself older. But why would any woman want to do that?
I changed it so I could get married.
And the truth shall set you free. My client lied about her age. She was only 17 when she got married, which makes her a minor. And in the great state of California, no minor can enter into any legal contract without parental consent, including
Prenuptial agreement.
prenuptial agreements. This contract is void. The fact that my client has been ridden more than Seattle slew is irrelevant. Standard community property applies, and she is entitled to half of the marital assets, or $11.395 million. Jordan fades back. Swoosh. And that's the game. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Have you ever had any moments like that?
I've had some moments that aren't far from that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if you got a judge who'll let you do the thing, you
run it up.
You could. I will go to 11 if given the opportunity.
What do you think is your most dramatic performative moment? Does anything stick out?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I got a bunch of them. I mean, my most performative one I've talked about before, I laid down in a courtroom. I laid down on the floor in a courtroom because I had to establish a key piece of testimony was the distance my client was from something, and the judge didn't like my client. So the judge was trying to make it seem like my client was further, and it was important for my case that they be accurately closer. So I said, Your Honor, if the record could reflect, I actually had, it was a child witness, and I approached and I said, okay, I'm going to step back from the bench. And when I get as far from you as my client was, could you tell me to stop? And she was like, okay. So very slowly and performatively, I stepped back and I got about 3 feet, 3.5 feet. And she said, stop. And I said, right here? She said, yeah. I said, so where I am is where he was. She says, yes. I say, Your Honor, if the record could reflect. And he says, yeah, the record will reflect that Mr. Sexton is about 9 feet away from the witness. I said, I'm sorry, respectfully, Your Honor, I'm about 3 feet from the witness. And he said, well, unless you have a tape measure, Mr. Sexton, you're going to go with my judgment and the record will reflect that you're 9 feet away. And without missing a beat, I immediately laid on the floor, put my feet against the jury box. And I said, Your Honor, if the record could reflect, I am 6'2". I am laying on the floor. My feet are on the jury box. And the spot where I was standing is where my knees are, which is approximately half my height, which would be 3 feet. And the judge said, Mr. Sexton, get off the ground right now. And I said, very well, Your Honor, if the record will reflect, then I am approximately 3 feet. And then I stood up and he was so apoplectic, he made us take a recess. And as we walked out, opposing counsel, who I get along with, looked at me and went, 25 years of practice. First time I've ever seen somebody lay on the floor. And I said, yep. And I still see her in the courthouse sometimes. We haven't had a case together since. And every time I see her, she just looks at me and she goes, I've never seen anything like that in my life. I have about 1 million stories like that. Yeah. I have a lot of stories.
We'll have to dive into those as we go on here.
Yeah.
But also the notion of someone missing your birth date to be a minor for a prenup.
I mean, there are things like that
wow.
are real. Like there are like procedural things that you realize that like the marriage was voidable or there was, bigamy. Like I just had a case where a guy found out that she had told him she was divorced, but her divorce hadn't been finalized. So she technically married him before she was divorced, which is technically bigamy, which means it's a voidable marriage. And it thwarted a lot of her equitable distribution rights. And then there's things that go the other way, like where a person thought, okay, we'll get religiously married, but we won't get legally married. And then the courts have said, oh no, that was in fact a legal marriage because you held each other out as spouses. So like there's all kinds of weird little glitches that can have a massive impact. Like there's certain language that has to be in agreements that purport to resolve child support. And if you don't have that language, the whole child support provisions are voidable. And sometimes somebody used like ChatGPT or like Bob the real estate lawyer to do their prenuptial agreement or their separation agreement. It turns out the whole thing is voidable. So there's all kinds of shocking Perry Mason moments that can happen in courtrooms. I'm telling you, courtrooms, the reason I don't watch a lot of TV is because the courtroom is the most fucking fascinating place you could ever be.
So what you're telling me is Liar Liar more realistic than Kramer versus Kramer.
Surprisingly
and Big Little Lies.
much more realistic than Kramer versus Kramer, and definitely Big Little Lies. That that was the most preposterous thing I've ever seen.
All right, well, let us know any more TV shows or movies or pop culture moments that involve legal proceedings, divorce.
There are
anything up our alley.
I mean, Law and Order, phenomenal. You can watch a lot of that stuff. My favorite courtroom films, I have two favorite courtroom films, both worth watching. One is called Indictment, the McMartin Trial. It stars James Woods. It's about the McMartin preschool trial, which was a trial involving allegations of child sexual abuse. It is one of the movies that made me want to become a lawyer. And then the core movie that made me want to become a lawyer was Judd Nelson was in a film called From the Hip. It was an unsuccessful film. It was about a young lawyer who decides he wants to become more successful as a lawyer and puts on this absolutely chaotic courtroom demeanor. I saw it when I was like a teenager and I was like, I want to be a lawyer and I want to be that kind of lawyer. And I grew up to be exactly that kind of lawyer. So those are two great films. From the Hip. And it was, I think, the first film he made after Breakfast Club. And the other one is Indictment, the McMartin Trial. Indictment, the McMartin Trial is shocking because it's a true story. And it's the kind of true story that makes anyone say, I would love to be a lawyer so that I could take that on. Also, The Rainmaker is another excellent John Grisham book, and it was made into an excellent film with Matt Damon. The book is better than the film, but the film is still pretty good.
All right, we'll take a look at a few scenes
there.
We'll
do this again. This is fun.
Leave some comments on what you guys want to see, and we'll cross-examine your favorite movie stars and TV stars going forward.
Love it. Love this pop culture stuff. We're going to do one on rap music too, some of the best and worst advice that's been given in rap music about legal rights and obligations. 99 Problems is a textbook of bad policing. So there's lots to talk about in the future on Cross-Examination. I hope you'll join us again. But for now, we're adjourned.